All right, well, Senator, I do want to welcome now Justin Goodman of the White Coat Waste Project, a group that's pushing to expose tax dollars going to the Wuhan lab and to continue this conversation on the origins of COVID-19. Justin, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so your organization, White Coat Waste Project, was the first to actually uncover this finding that went to the Chinese experiments. Tell me a little bit more.
Back in April 2020, just as the pandemic was declared, we exposed that taxpayer dollars via the National Institutes of Health, specifically Anthony Fauci's division, were being secretly funneled to the Communist Party-controlled Wuhan Institute of Virology via a nonprofit intermediary in the United States, specifically for experiments that involve manipulating coronaviruses in animal experiments to make them more virulent and transmissible to human beings. We also exposed that this nonprofit, EcoHealth Alliance, repeatedly violated federal law by failing to disclose that it was sending money to the Wuhan lab. Not only that, it has actively obstructed investigations into COVID's origins, as well as repeatedly refused to answer questions from Congress about its relationship with the Wuhan lab.
You know, Senator Ernst, I want you to listen to National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, what he said about dealing with China not cooperating with investigations into the lab leak.
We are not at this point going to issue threats or ultimatums. What we're going to do is continue to rally support in the international community. And if it turns out that China refuses to live up to its international obligations, we will have to consider our responses at that point, and we will do so in concert with allies and partners.
Senator, it doesn't seem like they are being that tough on China. How concerned are you right now about how the Biden administration is handling China?
I am very concerned about this. And of course, as Justin just outlined, we do have reason to believe that there could have been a leak. I don't know that we can ever prove that because communist China is blocking any sort of efforts to investigate the lab, what is happening at the lab. And of course, as White Coat Waste Project has unveiled, we have seen American taxpayer dollars funding studies within the Wuhan Institute of Virology. So we have taxpayer dollars that have gone there. We have the right to demand how those dollars were spent, how the pandemic started. We need answers, and certainly we need President Biden shaking his fist and stomping his foot at the Chinese and being very forceful about this. And I just don't see enough force behind it.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like there is force behind it. They just think that China is somehow going to hand over this information. But Justin, the federal government investigators are reviewing the National Institute of Health's grant program. This is including NIH relationship with EcoHealth Alliance, a nonprofit that helped fund the research at China's Wuhan lab. Many people have heard of Peter Daszak. He was the one involved with that. What are we seeing on the nonprofit side of this right now?
Well, EcoHealth Alliance is really the poster child for waste, fraud, and abuse in the federal government here. We have an unaccountable nonprofit that, despite defying Congress, despite breaking the law, has just since the pandemic began received $19 million in new federal grants. And on top of that, has received $1.5 million in pandemic bailout money for an outbreak they might have been responsible for causing. Now, fortunately, Senator Ernst has introduced some new pieces of legislation, specifically the STOP Act, which would hold accountable for federal grantees who are going to break the law and say, okay, if you can't follow the basic laws that govern your grants, your money is cut off. And unfortunately, that hasn't been the case. But had it been the case a couple of years ago, not only would we have maybe known that this money was going to Wuhan, we might have been able to stop it before the problem started.
Absolutely. And the fact that Fauci was allowing this money to go there when gain of function wasn't allowed in other ways. But Senator Ernst, we looked into this. 46 lawmakers have asked for transparency into what happened at the Wuhan lab. We still obviously don't know. You have created this STOP Act, which would say stop funding of any organization that isn't transparent. Do you have bipartisan support for this?
We do have a lot of interest in this bill, and so I'm excited to see the number of people that have expressed interest in it. But bottom line, we know that EcoHealth Alliance has disobeyed federal regulation and law multiple times over, and yet they continue to receive funding and grants through the NIH. So the STOP Act, again, we are getting a lot of interest in this. The STOP Act would prevent any additional funding going to those projects where they're failing to disclose where the money is going to and how the money is being spent. That's exactly what EcoHealth Alliance has done. They have taken American taxpayer dollars and used them at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, yet refuses to explain to NIH how those dollars were used. They are part of the problem. We need to get to the bottom of the pandemic, and yet we can't get those answers when we have those responsible parties that will not share information.
Oh, we got to get to the bottom. Thank you for what you both are doing to ask for transparency, and glad to hear there is some bipartisan support. Senator Ernst, Justin, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.